And then on that second, that very first second, before they sing, when they're all standing there in front of the church, and I just do this with my hand, and they all breathe together. For that one breath, doesn't matter if they are, doesn't matter their political inclination, doesn't matter their walk of life, doesn't matter anything. In that one breath, they all have the same intention.
Hi, I'm Xander, and this is the Days Before You podcast. Music has always been a big part of how I connect with God. Depending on the mood, I have a different Christian playlist to choose from, whether it be Christian rap when I'm feeling super hype, or soft, comforting songs that remind me of Jesus' love. But over time, something shifted. The more I listened, the more I started thinking critically about Christian music. Is it just an emotional experience, or is it truly creating space for a real connection with God? That question led to another. What about the music we sing in church? What's really happening in those moments of worship? Music is powerful. There's no denying that, which is why today we have Daniel Bondaczuk. He is the worship pastor at the Madison Campus Church in Tennessee, and he knows music. Hello, Daniel.
Hi, Xander. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you coming on today, and I just wanted to start out. Can you introduce your background? How did you get into music into the first place?
That would be a long story that I'll try to make it super short for these purposes here. But
yeah.
Ever since I was a kid, I was in second grade. My mom came to me one day and she gave me two options. I mean, son, you're getting older. It's about time you're going to do something outside of school. And these are your options. You can either take swimming lessons or you can take piano lessons. And it turns out when we had that conversation, it was a very cold day, so I chose piano. I didn't like it in the first place. It took me actually quite several years to warm up to it until one day I realized how much that had become part of my life. And I couldn't do anything else. It just became such a part of me. And at that point, I think kind of the tables turned when my mom came to me. I was getting, out of high school, about to go to college, and I made the decision to pursue a career in music. And my mom was like, "My son, you gotta be crazy. Go choose something else." But at that point, the decision was already made. It's been such a part of my life that I couldn't just see myself doing anything that wasn't that. And ups and downs in the journey, you add 20 years after that point, or 20 plus years after the point, which is sad because it reminds me that I'm getting old. But I can say that I've been in a variety of positions and situations with music, in the church, outside of the church, worked with artists, worked in the studio, led choirs, led contemporary music. So I think that gives me a very unique perspective on the subject. That it's not necessarily mainstream, but it's kind of, I think it's broad enough that there might be some insights in there.
That's really cool, yeah. So over time, you've done this for a while, so how have you seen music change, especially obviously Christian music? How have you seen that evolve and change over time?
Well, I do have a temporal perception, but I also had a big relocation in the middle of this process, which also switches the perception a little bit. I was born and raised in Brazil. I guess you can tell by the accent that I have that I just can't get rid of. But my home church was a very traditional church. I had a very formal music education. All the opportunities there were very traditional and formal. We had orchestra, we had concert bands, we had half a dozen choirs for all age groups, and we had that environment that was cultivated around that whole community experience that came with that. So for me, that was kind of the background I came on. We sang hymns, and pretty much hymns only. Anything that wasn't a hymn was kind of adapted into that structure of very traditional music. Now it's even different there these days. That's just not the way it is anymore. But then over the course of the years, I had the opportunity to work in churches that were non-Adventist, and they had a different perspective. Then somehow I moved to the United States, and then it feels like this is an entire different world. I think it has, in a certain way, evolved by style and aesthetics, because it's just the way the world is, and with technology these days, I think the pace of change is much faster than it used to be when I was a kid. But in another ways, I don't think it has changed that much. Because in the end of the day, doesn't matter the aesthetic. It matters if in music can accomplish a purpose, and that is to engage people in this in the context of worship. And I think to that end, I don't see much of a difference from the hymns that I grew up singing to a contemporary worship song. I might see differences in what audience that connects with, and how those different audiences connect with music, and how that helps to shape their religious experience and their walk with God. But in a certain way, there isn't much of a change beyond the aesthetics. The purpose of music stays the same. The way that people connect stays the same. You're just changing, the type of music they are connecting with and they are using to make that connection.
Yeah, it's interesting. So do you feel then, in that case, that with some of more Christian or contemporary Christian music, that would you agree that some of it might be over what's the word?
Sensibilized or sensitive, or I don't know.
Well,
over emotional.
Over emotional. Yes. Yeah, I guess that's the word I'm trying to find.
Yes and no. Again, you have to look and analyze on a base to base. I'll give you an example to what I'm saying. If you look at most of the hymns in our hymnal, we were talking about songs or hymns. That most of them were actually songs before they were even hymns. The tunes themselves existed before religious context was attributed to them. But most of those tunes originated somewhere in between the 1700s and the 1800s. Some span all the way through the first half of the 19th century. The 1800s in particular were an era that in the arts we consider the Romanticism, because everything was about emotion, everything was about expression, was about being authentic to one's expression. So a lot of those hymn tunes in our hymnal, were set to songs and music and melodies from that time. Now we live in an era, in a time where things are much more practical. And because of this fast pace of life and fast change of progress, I don't necessarily feel that a contemporary song is more emotional or has a greater emotional appeal than a traditional hymn. I particularly find that some actually might have actually quite good poetry, which that's something that I have that discussion. I see that discussion a lot too. People like to compare the hymns as the gold standard, but there are worship songs that really have really great content and really good poetry, and there are hymns that have great content and great poetry, and there are worship songs that don't. It's just fluff, and there are hymns that are also not that great. So again, it's a case by case basis. I think it's hard to put those descriptions in a box, and say, because when you try to put those in the box, we end up with this kind of discussion that old is good, new is bad, or new is good, old is bad, and the real discussion is so much broader than that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot more nuanced than what you're just black and white.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess going off of that, how would somebody identify within themselves if what they're listening to, no matter if they're listening to old or contemporary, how would they identify if they're listening to Christian music just for that emotional experience versus actually trying to connect with God?
Well, I think then we should ask first the question: is the emotional experience itself something bad? Is that something that we should avoid altogether? Is there a problem with an emotional experience? Because if you talk, like, if you talk to a therapist, for example, they would say that whatever emotion you're feeling that you kind of repress or suppress or put it, under the table, eventually resurfaces as some kind of trauma or a monster later. So to say that, I think to use the terminology emotion, kind of creates this thing. Music is meant to be felt.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong in expressing the way you're feeling, and you can't help the way you feel, and you shouldn't try to stop it. There's nothing, it isn't a sin to feel something.
Yeah.
God made us emotional, deeply emotional beings. So connecting with God will include an emotional experience. It might not be limited to just an emotional experience, but it will definitely include an emotional experience as part of that. So then the question, is the emotion bad? Is the emotion good? Is the emotional experience a bad part of it? Should I like a song because I like it, or should I like a song because it makes me feel something?
Yeah.
And it can get really nuanced and really difficult to walk that thread and try to separate things, when I think there is really not a problem in any of those things alone. Let me give you an example.
Okay.
Let's think worship as primarily an act that we perform, or that we collectively do, or individually even for the matter do, towards God. We worship God. We worship God in a variety of ways. We worship God through music, with worship. We worship God by proclaiming with words. We worship God. We can worship God by playing an instrument. We can worship God. You can go as far in theology as saying that we worship God by the way we live our lives, right? So that's kind of an all-encompassing thing. So that's that direction, that side of that relationship. But think about just about every good thing that God gave us. It kind of works both ways. It's never unidirectional. Let me give you an example. Are you married, Xander?
I am not.
You're not married. So one day you will be, and you will get to experience that blessing. I've been married for, oh my gosh, 15 plus years,
Wow.
which, again, I'm getting old. I don't feel it, but sometimes I'm reminded of that. But I've been married for 15 years, and marriage is one of those things, one of those institutions, one of those things that God gave us. And marriage is the greatest example, I think, when we think about that, because God calls the church the bride of Christ. So there it is, that marriage illustration. So I get great joy and a great emotional experience with my wife. Is that wrong?
I wouldn't say so. Yeah. No.
So if I do something thinking about the well-being of my wife, she is the main beneficiary of that action, but I get joy out of that process.
Yeah.
So look at worship in the same way. If I do something towards God, if I want to exalt the name of God, if I want to praise God's name or praise God for who He is, isn't that fair that I feel something in return in the same way?
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah.
So the emotional experience is a part of it. You can't disconnect in it. You can't say that, oh, if it is emotional, it's bad. No, you gotta lean into those emotions and live those emotions. There is also a rational aspect to it that you can't ignore, and I think it's dangerous when you ignore the rational aspect of anything. But by the same token, it is not good to ignore the emotional aspect. It's a balance between those two things.
Yeah. So let's talk real quick about that rational side of things.
Yeah.
Because like with your example of being married, there's a lot of things that you might do for your wife that bring you joy. But I'm sure there's also hard days for both of you. And there's hard days where you still have to do some of those things for your wife, and you might not find as much enjoyment. So I guess that leans more towards the rational side of things. Like, and I'm trying to like discuss, I guess, in this part of the conversation, like leaning, like staying within that like emotional side and like being comfortable, and not really expanding someone's like with through music, their connection with God, like is all, and they only focus on that emotional aspect instead of trying to like find something else that's deeper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think the emotional aspect can be the gateway. It can be the gateway to discussion. Can be the gateway to it's the thing that opens the door. You know, I mean, and once the door is open, I think it's easier to have some of those conversations. I'll give you an example. I was born and raised in church, but I had ups and down periods, especially in my youth. And in one of those periods, I've been for several years kind of distant from the church and didn't want to be much involved. And then one day, I had an opportunity to come into a church, and as I walk in, there was a choir up front, and they were singing a song that the Brooklyn Tabernacle Choir actually first sang. That is called "He's Been Faithful." I don't know if you know the song.
It sounds familiar. Yeah.
Yeah, but that thing hit me like a ton of bricks, and I can pretty much put back to that moment the pivotal point that turned my life around and made my way back. First, I can break it down rationally now into a few components. First, it wasn't a song I knew. I didn't know the song, so it wasn't the familiarity aspect. But the message of the song in itself was kind of very poignant to me at that moment. The familiarity aspect came with the choir itself, because I grew up playing and singing in choir. So that kind of created a connection, I guess. But that connection opened the door so that the message could get through. And I was at a point in life in which I was already beginning to wonder and to ask questions, and to wonder whether, I should, consider turning things around and coming back. And that thing was the thing that opened the door and brought me back in. Now, that was just the beginning of a journey. That wasn't the end of a journey. And I'm not saying that we should all go back to church now and sing that song, because again, there were circumstances that made that song speak to me in that moment. For different people, it will be different songs. It will be different formats, And I think that's something that I feel like the church struggles a little bit to acknowledge collectively. At Madison campus, I think we made great progress in the area, and I'm so proud that our church has such a diverse music. And I tell people, if you didn't like the music today, just come next Sabbath. It's going to be something completely different, But I'll tell you an example. My kids, they listen and they love Toby Mac. My son, knows all the lyrics and stuff. My wife just went with my oldest a couple weeks ago. Our youth pastor took them to a Toby Mac concert. And they had a blast. They came back home and they were talking about it for the whole week. And so you can tell the lingering impact that had on them. If you take me to a Toby Mac concert,
It's not the same.
It won't do much to me. I can like the music. I can appreciate the music for the craft and that goes into it. But it's not the type of song that connect with me. Yeah. Now, you can pretty much put. I'm using Toby Mac as the example, but you can look into anything. You can look into the hymns. You can look into more traditional music. You can look into songs that already made their way ubiquitously into the church that are not that old, like 10,000 Reasons. I think everyone can sing that at church, and in all of our churches eventually. That's not something that would be shocking to anyone, But then again, it's different songs, different styles, different things connect with different people. All of those were made with the intention of worship. All of those are somehow centered around God, or about the Christian experience, or about a journey with God. And each one of them connect to a different type, to different people. Now, because it connects to different people, I can say that one is better than the other. Yeah. because if you took my kids to that concert, to that thing that I went, that I saw the choir, it wouldn't connect with them. So it wouldn't. If my kid's life depended on that moment to change, it wouldn't have changed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we just gotta look from this greater perspective of things that we really need to stop vilifying styles and genres or how people connect to music, and we need to focus on first on God, and look around and just see, because if there is something that connects with someone, and it's clearly a blessing to them, then even if it doesn't move me, I should support that. Yeah.
Yeah. Why destroy something for somebody else if it makes them happy?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, that's really fascinating. Thank you for that. I wanted to ask then, if we're going off this and you're saying that people experience different worship styles and different songs in different ways, how much of a factor should music alone be when somebody's looking for their home church?
There is a saying that music is what's going to bring people into a church, but preaching is what's going to keep them in that church. So I think it might be a little too straightforward. I mean, again, reality is usually more nuanced than sayings or than opinions, but I think there is a little bit of truth into that. I think worship, in the case music, and preaching, are probably the two main elements of a worship service, and they work kind of both ways, but they kind of have a little bit of that. They establish a little bit of that direction. I mean, with worship, with connect, we reach out to God with worship. God reaches out to us through the sermon. And there is, I think, a beautiful poetry, just in just thinking that way. So yes, I mean, I think definitely people should try to look for a church that they like the worship, because if you don't like it, it's going to be very hard for you to sit there for 15, 20 minutes as they sing through it. That's not the one element, I think. I think all those things are great gateways, again, to get into the building. But the real work of the church happens there in the building, and I think it's the community. And I think a lot of people will come to a church because of music or preaching, but what really holds them in a place is the community they build around themselves in those places, which... Again, and I just love how fascinating this is, because you get to these full circles, that one thing feeds into another, and then you create these feedback loops. So again, music is a great way to build community. There is a saying that it takes a village to make music, but it takes music to make a village.
Oh wow!
Yeah. I think the community that you can truly create around musical activity, and that again can take many forms, it's unique and it's unmatched by anything else. I'll give you an example. You create community around sports, but sports have competition in its nature. Where there's competition, there is friction. Music knows no competition. Music and arts overall only know collaboration. So when people come to my choir, think about that for a second. You have 35 people from different ages, all walks of life. You have people who have been Christians or Adventists their entire life, and you have someone that just got converted last week that wanted to sing, and they all sit together. And then we give them music, and we teach them the music, and then on that very first second, before they sing, when they're all standing there in front of the church, and I just do this with my hand, and they all breathe together. For that one breath, doesn't matter if they are, doesn't matter their political inclination, doesn't matter their walk of life, doesn't matter anything. In that one breath, they all have the same intention. Think about that for unity. You know, I mean, in a world that is so hard to find common sense and agreement on just about anything, you know, music has the power to transcend that. You know, it's such a powerful device. Now think about that. You could extrapolate that even beyond. Think about a whole church when we sing together. You know, I mean, 200, 300, 400, 500 people there sitting together. That first breath before they sing, the first hymn, and then or the first song, and what comes out of their mouths. They breathe in the air, the symbol of life that God given us, because God breathed into Adam's lungs so that he could come alive. We breathe in that same air, and what comes out of that air is an expression of worship to that Creator. Think about that. I mean, just think about the poetry of all of this. I mean, you know, I mean, that's what I'm saying. You can't take the emotional aspect out of it. If you take the emotional aspect out of it, then you can't appreciate this thing. You know, I mean, you got to look at the God that made, you know, earth as it is with its seasons. You know, I mean, with all the beauty and color that it has. You know, I mean, that being has an appreciation for poetry. You know, I mean, you gotta have. You know, so we can't strip that out of our lives.
You know, that's fair. I love your passion about this, about music in general. Yeah, and especially about the community, because like they're one of my favorite YouTube like photographers. Always like in almost every video, he's like, it's community over competition.
Yes.
You know, because we're all learning from each other. We're all learning and like building new skills. Yeah. And with music, we're all going to learn from each other and make even more better music in the future.
Yeah. Yes.
So,
yes. So well, and just think about that also from the perspective of like the Christian walk. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, Pablo Casals, famous cello player, or I might be confusing, Yo-Yo Ma. I think, not Pablo Casals, cello player as well. But that would be a name that will be even more known these days. Somebody, I think he's now like past his 80s, might be getting, you know, to a certain age. I don't need to get into the specifics of that. But somebody asked him, I mean, he probably played cello for his entire life, so like 70 plus years of just making music. Somebody asked him how it is to keep playing your instrument for so long, you know, I mean, at this age, I mean, what you find that keeps you passionate about doing that? And he said, well, I keep doing it because I think I am making progress. So think about that for a second. You know, I mean, we talk about the Christian journey, the Christian life, about this thing in which we not always get things right, but we hope to at least be on a path in which we are at least trying. And again, I'm going to say that because I think it needs to be said. There is no amount of trying that's going to make you and I be perfect. Yeah. But there is something about the process of trying that is important and that is very character shaping in the life of a Christian. Now think of the parallel of that with music. You know, I mean, I've been making music for 30 plus years, and like you, I think I've been making progress. You know, and I still think that the best music I'm going to make is in the future. Mm-hmm. You know, and I want to do things better. I wanna ever be able to do things better. Just think on that passion that you can infuse in people. The concept of excellence, the concept of perfecting something that on the surface feels very small, you know, but then again, beauty is in the details, you know, and make the parallel of that with your Christian walk, with your walk with the Lord, and how sometimes you don't reach that mark, but the fact that you are trying, You know, I mean, there is an inspirational aspect that you can draw out of that, and there is this clear parallel that you can trace with music and community into this process. You know,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's really cool. So we've been talking a lot about community, and I wanted to go back a little bit, and I feel like I should have asked this question way earlier. But since we're talking about community already, I figured I might as well ask now, and it's about praise and worship.
Yes.
And I don't know if you would necessarily agree, but I've always believed that those are two different things. You know, praise is when you're in church and you have the community with you and you're all together praising God. But worship is a much more like private experience that you are as an individual. So I want to know your thoughts, if you agree with that, and if you do, like what the differences are of that.
I think it's a game of semantics. You know, I mean, you can trace the origins of those words in how we use them. Like, for example, when your team wins the league, you praise the athletes, right? I mean, we give praises to people all the time. Now, worship, the root of the word in English at least, comes from worth-ship. So you are proclaiming the worth of something or someone in the case. So that's a much deeper meaning, right? I'll give you an example. You might praise your team for winning. You are not going to worship your team for winning. I certainly hope not. At least.
There's some people out there.
Yeah. So I don't necessarily make that division so much in between like the public and the private, but I tend to use I don't necessarily like the word praise. I don't use it as much. You know, I mean, I like the word worship when it comes at least to music in the church. Because I think praise, it's kind of like a cheaper cheaper alternative. But then again, even if you think as worship, I mean, we can worship in community. You know, I mean, we can worship privately. We can worship with music. We can worship with prayer. We can worship with proclaiming, speaking out loud things. We can worship with the way that we feel. We can worship in a variety of ways. Praising, we can praise people by talking, you know, I mean, by general means. I mean, and that's kind of usually the one aspect. So I feel like praise is a little more one-dimensional. Worship is a more broad term that we should be using for God's worship. But then again, even when you think into music, into the church, and that's something that I think needs to be talked and needs to be understood. There are two types of music that we use at the church. Music that we sing collectively to worship God, and music that we sing in a certain way to worship God, but the way that we achieve that worship is, I would say, indirect. I'll give you an example. One may call these two ways a way that is collective and a way that is presentational. And I'll give you an example. I'll go back to that concert. You know, I mean, when I went to see that choir and they sang He's Been Faithful, I didn't sing with them. Yet, in that moment, I worshipped because they sang it. So see what I'm talking about? Their inspiration inspired me to worship, even if I wasn't at that moment singing with them. So when there is I think this misconception that not everywhere, but I hear people talking about it, that all the music in the church should be sung collectively, that we should not have any kind of presentational music in the church. But then again, I find it to be a little limiting in that context, because when the worship leader or the worship team or the choir or whatever you have in your church present something to the congregation that they are meant to watch as spectators, that is not a show of their showmanship or their quality or you know, I mean, that is not to exalt the players or the performance. That is a tool to inspire the congregation. And in that moment, if that is made right, in that moment, people will worship, even though they will not be necessarily engaged into singing, but they will worship with their souls. They will worship with their hearts. That message might do something in them, that singing might not do. Not everyone has a voice to sing, So I think there needs to be a difference. Not everything needs to be presentational. We don't need to have somebody singing up front a bunch of songs that no one knows all the time. But by the same token, that's not a sin either. That is not wrong. I think a very thoughtful worship leader or someone that is designing a worship service will, create a balance between songs that we sing together and songs, or at least one song, that we will present to the congregation as a gift to them that will inspire them to worship, with thoughts, with prayers, with a way that they will feel, or something like that.
Yeah. Or other actions,
or other actions.
Yeah,
and then again, and you never know, from that little moment, that might be the catalyst for a life of worship.
Like how it happened with you.
Like how it happened with me.
Yeah.
So then again, we try to put things in boxes and try to say this is right, this is wrong, we should do this, we should do that. But reality is hardly boxable. Everything is so nuanced and so complex. And there is such a beauty in being able to embrace those things and study this and study human behavior and study how people react to those things, and there's so much room for experiment. The way that I've been doing in our church recently, the way that I've been doing in our church, like for all the time that I've been there, but the way that I found is I try to have at least 2-3 songs that the congregation can sing with the worship team. Then I'll have the worship team sing one song that I don't expect the congregation to know or sing. And that normally is going to be a song that will, have a little greater technical difficulty, that will have, a message that is a little more provocative, something to stir thought. Yeah. Then after the sermon, we do a song collectively together. This one just with piano and the congregation. I normally lead those from the piano, which amounts to say that I play it and hopefully the congregation sings because because I can play and sing together very well. But that is a response. So that engages them, hopefully in different ways in every one of those opportunities. And in the end of the day, all of it, even when they are not singing, it is meant to make them worship.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I will say that I've seen you perform several times in Madison, and there was one experience. I don't remember exactly when it was, but obviously I hope you remember it, but it was you had several songs in back to back to back.
Yeah.
Was a special
it probably was one of the special programs.
Yeah. I just thought it was just so impactful because you didn't even transition. You didn't we're going to play this song next. You just went from straight song to song to song. And that whole sequence was really impactful for me. So first of all, I want to appreciate you for that and all your skills and talent.
Well, praise the Lord for that.
Yeah.
I can't take credit for any of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been a journey at Madison. I thoroughly enjoy what we have done. My academic background is not in theology. I keep saying it out loud, and people keep rebuking me for that I am your non-pastoral pastor, because I don't have a degree in theology. I don't want a degree in theology. My academic background has been entirely in music. Back in Brazil with piano, which has always been my main instrument, and in here with composition. So the year was 2020, and I have been out of school already 4 years, I think, at that point, or 2019 actually. And it's been 3 years that I have been out of school, and I was having that kind of pep talk with myself that, Daniel, if you're gonna continue calling yourself Daniel Composer, you actually gotta write something. Yeah. Because for 3 years I didn't write anything. And I was just, I deal with music on a daily basis, so I'm always playing, I'm always, directing, I'm always doing other things. But writing music for me is a very meaningful ways of expression. And at that point, I wasn't doing it. And I thought, well, I don't want to write something that no one will sing. I don't want to write something that no one will hear. Because, with most composers, that's what happens. If you're not writing for a specific purpose, nobody will even find it and look for it. Nobody's looking for weird music or new music or whatever. But I thought, well, I have this choir here in the church that I've been directing for a while. I can write music for them. And that thought just lingered in my head. And then our pastor at the time, Pastor Ken, came to me and said, hey, I've done this play at camp and a while ago. I wonder if you could do something like that here at the church. And I, even without thinking too much, I said, well, if you will let me write original music to it. And that was kind of the beginning of my compositional journey, which was kind of the starting of the big programs that we've done at Madison campus. So we've done we really capitalized on Easter and Christmas because those are the perfect opportunities to invite people into the church, people that normally don't come here. So every year we make a big deal out of those. I write, a brand new. In the past years, I did like oratorios, cantatas. I don't want to get into the technical aspect of what's the difference between those, but I found them to be the most encouraging things to the choir and to the orchestra. People have really became supportive of that. So they come, we practice that for 3, 4, 5 months, sometimes getting ready for those programs. We make it into a big concert, 40 minutes of music. Pastor comes, preaches. In the end, we sing together a hymn too, with the congregation, kind of in that format that I was telling you. And I've seen the impact it has had over the years, very, very positively. But it is different than what you think. Who do you think gets the greatest impact?
The church members, the congregation?
No.
Is it you?
Well, I've been blessed by it, yes, but I don't think so. I think the greatest impact is in those who participated, who sang, who played. And I've seen it not only for the sake of musicianship, like we were talking about, and they get better and next time they do better, but because, the people that come and watch it, they see it once, 40 minutes, that's it. With today's brains, nobody can assimilate 40 minutes of music, you might have a memory of how you felt, but I can assure you don't remember a single line of music or text that we sang. Now think about the people that play in it, that sing in it. They practice it for 4, 5, 6 months. Every single one of those rehearsals, depending on what we were rehearsing, there was an opportunity for me to talk to them about what inspired that piece, about how that relates to us. It's the power that it has, it's exponential. So if that goes back to the original thing that we were talking about. Yes, we do that to worship God. We do that to inspire other people. Yet, as we do that, it feels like the greatest blessing is reaped by us.